we got the accounts basically resolved. We had the Wax account being created. Eve just posted the Bitfinex address for USDT ERC20. Everybody just confirmed that the payments are going to be performed in USDT ERC20. So this, after all the accounts have been validated and checked, if all works, then the change will transfer the funds over to the Bitfinex account. So this is what we just discussed before we started the meeting.
And I'm just posting in the channel, in order to create the invoices, I'll just need a little bit of information from each chain. So the business name, that's essentially sending the funds, the business address, and an email to send the invoice to. I'm posting that in the group right now.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Good. Then yeah, Jeff is not here today, so just a short update. Jeff did send me the RFP template, which I thought we'd go over, but I think if Jeff's not here, I'm not going to take his kind of credit for this. So I would propose that Jeff would present that, unless Ted, you've been working on that together. Unless you kind of wanna go through that in a second and show the content
of the RFP. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
No, we don't have that ready. I thought it was 2 weeks to do that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's just I received the document. I thought we talked about it, but then it's fine.
Yeah. we're not going to show any more templates to Douglas.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Yeah, good. Then we discuss about that anyway. So that's great. What I did, just another off topic regarding the RFPs. I was talking to Adam from ex-EOS Detroit, so how they call it, Detroit Leisure Technologies nowadays. They did raise a worker proposal on Telos to create a Telos build, as they call it, which is basically an RFP management system. So I've got the approval from him to circulate that into this group. So I will push it into the Telegram channel later, so you can have a look at that. It's basically, it is a software to manage RFPs and have roles assigned to kind of approve RFPs and move forward with them. Because Jeff has been mentioning that we obviously also need to look at the process for this. So I thought this might be interesting, because that's just being developed by DLT anyway. So I drop this into the chat later, so we can have a look at that. And it's probably currently looks like it's gonna be funded by Telos. So we may want to consider some refunds or whatever if we want to use this. So it seems to be already built to a point where Adam could probably share that with us in a separate meeting.
Yeah, maybe even have them do a demo. I mean, not everyone is probably interested, but I would be interested, as would Jeff, and maybe a few of us can get on and see where they're at and what they have, if that's okay with the group.
Yeah, I'm interested as well.
Okay, I will organize this. So let me take this. What did I say? How's it called? Yeah. Okay, got this. I will organize this and ask who wants to join this for the next week. Next week, please. Okay. Good. So looking at the in progress items for today, is there is there anything that you would like to add to the agenda that we haven't discussed last week? Any new topics that you would like to add? Anybody? Okay, take this as no. So for the in progress items, we have the Brand proposal. Is obviously it's due for May 12th. We discussed that last time. If there is any updates or any new information, feel free to just share that at the moment. Okay, take this as no. Then communication strategy update. Brandon, you did post something into the group. Did you receive any feedback, or you want to just outline what the content of this is and where you need any further information?
Yeah, I just was checking in, mostly kind of waiting for some news to report, essentially. So now that the accounts are created and being funded, and I think once priorities are developed or decided upon, then we'll have something a little bit more newsworthy to push. So I guess regardless, I was given probably what we're going to decide on today, we'll be able to push some news out. So we'll start our first 2-week kind of biweekly cycle this coming Thursday. So my current plan is to produce a draft on Thursday after these calls every other week, and then have it ready for comment on Fridays over the weekend, send it off for translation on Monday, and then we'll have the translators will have a couple days to work on it, and then we'll have something ready to go out Wednesday or Thursday. Basically, do like a week turnaround on that. So I was just kind of waiting for these accounts to get finalized, and I think when they're funded, that'll be like about the most newsworthy event we could report on, and then there's plenty of other things. So I'm just keeping an ear out for whatever else the group thinks is noteworthy.
Okay, awesome. So I just took those points over here that you outlined from the chat, and then we might add some during this call today.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay. Jeff did circulate the proposal. No, he did not circulate the proposal for status update, but
I think that we're going to probably remove that. I don't think we should use what Jeff was suggesting in there with this group. And we'll work on some other way to do that with you. And I think maybe it's something you and I and Jeff can meet on offline, Kristen. But I think his proposal would have gone over like a lead balloon in this group. Which is different than his RFP thing, which again, people can review offline in their own time.
Makes sense.
We take this where you and I and Jeff meet, just the three of us, Kirsten, I think that might be more productive.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So just changing that to get this done for next week. It's already 21st, isn't it?
Yes, today is.
So okay, we pick this up for the next meeting then. That's great. So we did have the discussion on the group phases. That was pretty much at the end of last meeting. Is there any update or anything further from you, Brandon? Douglas volunteered to do this for Telos. I'm not sure if you drove this forward.
No, other than we had a really successful Twitter Spaces event, and I think that's the venue to do this. And I talked to Zach a little bit about that, and I'll just be looking for representatives from the other chains that want to appear on or make an appearance on the Twitter Spaces and get something on the calendar. So
maybe be heard would be a better phrase.
Yeah, be heard. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I propose we just move that to done, and I think it's it's an ongoing process, and we might want to have different people on those Twitter Spaces depending on topics. So I would propose just to move that to done because it's in progress, if that's fine for everybody.
Sounds good.
Okay, communicate payment. We have this here, but we are obviously on close to the goal and have that being circulated. Validate requirement of invoices. That's what you just mentioned and push forward. So we change this to invoice information to be sent to Eve. Okay, so we have this. And then I took this task for next week there. Okay, so looking on the agenda items, I've seen the Twitter Spaces EOSIO Plus. I personally haven't been able to watch it. So would you like to give like a short update how it turned out, how many people were there, what the topics were that were touched on this? Brandon, maybe you want to kind of elaborate on that?
Are you talking about the EVM?
I'm not sure which Twitter Spaces you're referring to. As far as I know, there was no EOSIO plus Twitter Spaces.
Oh yeah, it was set up. Sorry for that, my fault. So we wanted to set this up. So have you done anything there yet?
That's basically, you can combine that with the other item that's in progress, which is the group faces thing. It's the same thing.
We would ideally want one speaker from each chain on the coalition, and then we would prepare questions in advance and just kind of prepare individually as each chain. And it'd just be, I would compare it to a panel at a crypto conference. So just we'd have a host or a moderator. They would ask the questions, and it would mostly just be to show everyone else the collaboration and be able to kind of like explain it and the value it brings to each chain.
Okay, great. Then I'll move it to done because it's in progress.
I think the timing for it would make the most sense as soon as we solidify what our top priorities are. I think that gives us a really good launching point to have like a lot to talk about of how we came to those decisions, why those however many priority, like 5 or whatever we come up with as the most immediate priorities, how we came to that, why it's important to us, and it's just a good timing. So I don't know when that'll be, but it won't be too far from now, but it's not this week or next week, obviously.
Yeah, and if the different chains represented could decide amongst themselves who wants to speak for that chain, that'd be really handy. And I'll reach out if I don't hear anything.
Yeah. Okay, then we've got update from of committees and work groups. Have there? We obviously have. Let me go down. We have. Let me go down. That's obviously very good German English. So we had. I've seen the Scalability Plus group has been meeting. If you want to give a short update on the content without sharing too much. Probably Lucas, you wanna
for sure
give us some update?
Yeah, we ended up meeting this week for the first time, and we kicked off our activities with trying to determine what the objectives are going to be, what is the scope, and we spend that time talking about the initial set of KPIs that we're going to be using in terms of defining the success of the Scalability Plus group, how we're going to categorize different projects, And then we went through the ad hoc items that were introduced towards the end of the prioritization exercise. That included some of the Scalability Plus items. And we essentially determined which ones belong in the Scalability Plus group. We ended up with some action items at the very end to have people essentially define a paragraph for each to kind of define what that item is, what we're trying to accomplish. That was pretty much it. I'm hoping that out of that discussion, we can start forming the first draft of our blue paper, which we can start discussing maybe next week.
Okay, so looking at the date we assigned to that, which was next week, it seems to be well in line with the plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add just regarding Scalability Plus. I'm not sure how we want to go about this, but it may make sense to have Kirstine attend these calls if time permits, because I feel like over time it may be valuable to have a little bit of your Miro board skills put to contribution. I feel like these discussions will probably generate a lot of very valuable information. Taking notes, taking minutes would probably be a good thing.
Next week would probably be difficult, but let's take this on Telegram and check the availability. And did you plan already a next meeting, or is that going forward from then?
Yeah, we agreed to make it recurring for the time being, and I don't mind doing I guess some of that work, but I think you're better at it than I am. So.
Okay, so when is the meeting?
We have it set for I believe Tuesday. Is it the same slot? Sometimes this one. Yeah.
2 p.m. on 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. or New York time next Tuesday, 2 to 3:30. I could do a project board that's much like the Mira board next week, if you like, in GitHub. It wouldn't be a Mira board, but it would be at least a start if we wanted to use that format. Same type of format of columns, looks almost identical. It just would be a different tool than Mira.
Yeah, I'd be perfectly fine with that. That would be great.
And I'm happy to do that. And then Kirsten, if you want to convert it, or you don't mind picking it up from GitHub later, or however, we'll work with you on that, Kirsten.
Well, I'm fine using GitHub for that too. So the tool is just a tool. At the end of the day, it's having those issues documented and organized. So we can give it a try with GitHub and work from there. So I have no problem with that. And if we can move that over from there. So it's just half an hour, right? So
no, it's an hour and a half. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's from 2 to 3:30.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out when UTC that is.
And just another thing with regards to that meeting that happened on Tuesday, we identified, I believe 5 or maybe 6 of these ad hoc priorities that were reasonably high in the list. So we assigned people to define them, the one-pagers. I think Lucas shared his notes for that call, so I'll just maybe remind these people that this is kind of expected for next meeting. One of which was essentially the P2P code rewrite. We wanted to define what that entailed, it wasn't exactly clear. So that's, I think, for the ENF to.
Would you want to spend a little time on this call, Eve? The few times I've asked Eve to explain it, he's done a very good job explaining why, gives the rationale, the background. I mean, Dan, even when he launched the chain, said this thing is just spaghetti code and it needs to be rewritten, but it is a performance impact, for the consensus it will create, it will cause, it's needed for faster finality because of the speed. But Eve, would you mind? Eve's eating right now, so of course I'm asking him to speak while he's eating.
That's fine. I'm probably not the best person to be able to explain it because it'll need a more technical explanation. But yeah, the idea is that the peer-to-peer code rewrite has been highlighted as an issue since even before mainnet launched. It was being discussed as something that needed to be done. And it's one of those things where it's in the background. It's essentially something that people won't see, but it's the operators, especially at the VP level, that if there's stronger peer-to-peer code and it's simpler to, I guess, tweak or to operate, then it makes a big difference on the output for the end user experience. EOS right now is facing issues with peer-to-peer in general. And it's an ongoing issue that keeps coming back. And a big part of it, and I guess we don't have Kevin on the call, is that if that code were to be rewritten, it would really strengthen the foundation of the peer-to-peer networking in the back. And that particular item has been brought up by operators now for years. Like, it's not recent, it's something that's keeps getting brought up over the years. And as quickly as even before mainnet launch. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think everyone in the Scalability Plus group agreed that this was definitely a topic for Scalability Plus to address. Really, the only thing we're missing at this point with regards to that element item is some sort of that, I guess, like that one pager
actual of
what needs to be done and all of that. So probably I would guess that like the ENF is well positioned to write that with your current resources, maybe with a bit of help from Aaron and other
Matthew Darwin.
Matthew, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's probably like a combination of, and Aaron is on the call, I'm not sure if he can chime in, but combination of maybe Matthew, Aaron, Kevin Hefner,
maybe even Stan.
Perhaps. I don't know. Aaron, are you able to just comment on this from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think I echoed some of the same things on the scalability call, in that it seems like improving the peer-to-peer network is kind of an underlying thing that improves a lot of things. And then I did bring up the fact that faster finality is going to create more demand on the peer-to-peer network in some way. So improving that will potentially lead to improvements in whatever we do for faster finality.
Yeah, that was also brought up by Eric on the call. And I think he recognized that it was important that P2P code rewrite, but it might come after we agree on things like like faster finality implementation, IBC implementation, and so on and so forth, because essentially, like, the way we design faster finality and IBC will then be taken into consideration as we refactor, like as we rewrite the P2P code to really like facilitate these type of operations. So yeah, there might be a like in terms of the sequence, there's probably a bit like there's some prerequisites before we get to fleshing it out. But it can probably still be like at least the one pager overview can probably still be drafted. Easily. It doesn't have to be.
Can take the lead on coordinating the drafting of that one pager. I'm thinking that we could probably get the help of OCI on that and reach out to others. Right. So we can take the lead on coordinating that one pager. Sure.
That'd be great. Yeah, thanks.
And maybe give about 2 weeks for that because I need to actually reach out to the people that will write it, and find out whether they can.
I've just checked my calendar. We've got a bi-weekly steer call on the Tuesdays at close to that time. So if you like to have me on that call, it would be great to move it to 1 hour earlier if that's possible for you. Otherwise, I will only be able to participate every second week.
Okay, let's see. Maybe with for this week we already set it up, but we'll bring it up during that next week's call. See if people have any objection moving it 1 hour earlier.
And we mentioned this actually on the Twitter Spaces event, which had nothing to do with this group the other day, but some people were asking about the various working groups. And I think it's pretty cool that the ENF created the concept of the working groups early on. And as soon as this particular group, EOSIO Plus, formed a new coalition, within 1 week, we had a new working group that stemmed from this working group called Scalability Plus. And so things are moving ahead. So I just want to congratulate people because that's awesome. That's really cool.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so then I'll just check in with the creation of faster finality RFP document. Ted, you want to just give a short update? It's not due for this week, but just checking in how you've been proceeding.
You're muted, Ted.
We've had a medical emergency with Jeff's family, and so he's been out of the office a good chunk so far. So we don't have a lot other than participating in the Scalability Plus work group to make sure that we're gleaming all the information there and working with the engineers and Kevin and stuff to try to make sure we're getting the information we need. We haven't actually started fleshing out the actual document yet.
So do you think it's realistic to keep the timeline for that, or do we have to move that by 1 week?
I think we can make it. I'm assuming Jeff's not going to encounter additional medical emergencies. We do have time to get that done, and it's not that much. I mean, we have a draft that was written by the Scalability Plus team. We just need to reformat it into the RFP format, which you've seen the RFP format now. So, let's see if we can come in and hit that.
Excellent. Okay.
Just to add on this, I made some updates to the faster finality overview document, the one that Jeff originally put together. And in addition, I'm pretty much done with the first draft of a kind of updated paper that includes everything that was discussed in the later part of the Scalability Plus 2 days ago. So essentially, like, these were, I guess, like other items that should probably be implemented at the same time than faster finality to really enable these use cases that we're all hoping to get to work. So in any case, that includes like a few formal cryptographic verification proofs and whatnot, a bit of math, not too much, but it's probably something that we'd want to see in there as well.
Appreciate that. I did actually look at the document and seen that you had added more to it, so thank you.
Okay. So then we have the Wallet Plus SDK group. Erin, maybe you want to give a short update to the status.
Wait, what are we? Oh, the RFP. I have not started on that yet.
Okay. Then going back to faster finality, we had the discussion about Ultra contributing to this. Has there been any update in regard to that discussion?
What Eve was going to reach out to Ultra or was going to talk to Ultra?
No, so there has been no update on that. So I did ask, and I was just looking to see if Rami's on the call or if David are on the call, but they're not. I did send an email back to find out, as per Rami's request, to find out what Ultra would be contributing, if they can contribute, like ballpark range, and I have not heard back. And I was expecting for them to join today, seeing as we've made these calls back into the other group, and Rami was always here. So maybe we can post a message in that group.
Yeah, and in any case, as we, I guess I kind of, I guess in the process of realizing as we were having the discussion on faster finality, we have right now an opportunity as chains to determine exactly which aspects of fast finality are interesting for each of us, and I guess like it's not just like a one possible implementation of fast finality that serves like a X purpose. There's quite some nuances in how it's implemented, and what is the underlying goal, like what are the use cases that we want to support with faster finality. And I think for Ultra, it would definitely help if they were to communicate these use cases that they like to see enabled, because if they don't participate to these discussions, they might not get the faster finality that they are looking for, in a sense. So
correct. So do you think it'd be worthwhile including them in the scalability call?
I would invite them. I mean, like, and straight up tell them, like, listen, if you, I mean, I think as a group, we're definitely open to Ultra contributing both financial resources and their expectations or requirements for faster finality. I think it helps the whole group. But of course, like, I mean, as long as they understand that if they don't communicate that information and they don't want to participate, their views will not be taken into account as we decide what is the solution, like the engineering solution to the problem. So yeah, I would simply like tell them, like, if you guys want to participate in how we're drafting these requirements, you're welcome, and we welcome like your contribution. Otherwise, you can just follow the Scalability Plus discussions, and some sort of finality is going to be implemented. It might not fulfill their expectations if they don't participate. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing you have to tell them. After that, ball is in their court, and they decide what to do.
So I guess this is being. Oh, go for it, Kirsten.
Yeah, sorry, Guillaume, you will take this task and invite them to the group, or who's going to do this?
I mean, I was thinking probably Eve is the better fit for that. I don't really know Rami that well. Don't even know if I ever talked to him.
Well, see, I was asked not to ask Rami, but to ask David, and so that's why it's kind of it's an odd, like, chicken or the egg at this point. I'm thinking, well, so this is recorded right now. We're going to be making this public right now. What I can do is, once this is made public, I can get a timestamp. I can resend an email, point to this timestamp, also make a quick debrief in that email, and communicate with them that way. So I'll reach out to David. I guess I could do it through Telegram as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But is actually a good question. Is David in our group? Because then we could just do it in the same group. Yeah, David is there. So I'll just do it in our Telegram group. That way David and Rami both are in the group. And then we can link to, once this video is posted, we can also then give the timestamp so they can come and listen. Because what Guillaume just said, I think is really important, is it's not just financial contribution. If if you're not at the table in the design phase, and in Alcar's case, it's even more relevant because we don't see the source of their code. I think it would be important to have them on the calls and to have them, in those discussions if really they are interested in it, if it is a priority. But I guess then that opens up, it's a question for the group. I don't necessarily have an answer. So if everybody wants faster finality, including other chains, where do we, because obviously we want to be as inclusive as possible, but there are also costs of integrating everybody's perspective and ensuring that whatever it is we work on takes into account the requirements or the wishes of those chains. Are we, and I guess maybe it's somewhat of a rhetorical question, is the idea that your requirements will be taken into account if you are a paying member? And if you are not a paying member, then we will listen, but we may not guarantee. And then do we then go, is there a threshold for how much you pay? Well, great, I'll send you $1. Can you take my requirements into account? Like, how will we, yep. I don't necessarily have an answer. And I guess this is the first challenge that we're facing with this, because we have 4 chains that have clearly indicated they are not only paying, but they've been contributing brain power to these discussions and human resources to be able to even make these calls happen and such. I want to be as inclusive as possible, but I also want to be realistic that obviously the coalition has showcased a will and a desire than others have not at this stage. And so, we are having this call, everybody's invited on this call. It will be a challenge. So I would invite those, especially if there's others on the call that aren't necessarily in the coalition, to chime up. And how do you see your contributions to things like this? Because faster finality is a really good example where prior to the coalition forming, I believe every chain had mentioned that would be a priority. That'd be something that'd be of interest to them. So where do we kind of draw the line, or how do we, anyways, I think I've made the point across. It'll be an interesting challenge for this one.
Yeah, I think faster finality is also probably like a kind of exception, since where it ranked in everyone's priorities, and the fact that there's like, I guess this is something that a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. It doesn't mean that whatever solution we like ad hoc solution we use for Ultra to contribute to that particular agenda item is a repeatable thing for other agenda items. I mean, that's the whole point of that coalition, of the membership, and of the structure of this group, is to be able to participate in these discussions and have a say, have a vote in taking these decisions. Obviously, someone, as far as I'm concerned, any chain in a sense is definitely welcome to listen to what we're saying, potentially even to bring their own views and opinions to the table. But the coalition members get to vote, and ultimately, like if you want to vote in the process, you have to pay your dues as well as everyone else. So that's kind of how I see it. Like, this is like representation, basically. Like your representation is achieved through paying your membership fees. Otherwise, as an observer, no problem. You can sit on these calls. You can, I mean, at the very least, listen to these calls, potentially sit on them, and even talk if it's like value added comments and perspectives that bring clarity and insight to the process. But if they want to vote, they would have to be part of the coalition.
Just for clarification, when you say vote, at this point, let's say we voted that we want to prioritize faster finality, are you also referring to vote in terms of what that even means? Because that's what we're trying to figure out, right?
I mean, to figure out what it means probably is, I guess, something that won't require a vote. But I guess at the end of the day, when it comes to like that when this RFP is drafted and we're about to submit it for tender, probably there's another vote that goes there to determine if this is ready, if this fits everyone's priorities and expectations and whatnot. And it may be that, I prefer if we reach consensus between members on every single thing. That's always preferable. Realistically, it may not happen. So far it seems we're things are are going quite well, but there will probably be situations where we won't see eye to eye, and then we'll defer to the voting weights and all of that, and that's perfectly fine. That's part of the process. But I would think, priorities definitely are things that we should vote on, as well as final RFP
assignment of contract or
Yeah.
Including what that entails in terms of scope of work.
Exactly. Yeah.
That would work for me. I think that makes sense.
And
so I think that's part of the idea of also keeping these calls open as well. Is we're definitely the idea is to continue that transparency that we've created, so that everybody can have a say and talk and be able to partake in the discussion.
I personally, my personal opinion though is that we founded the coalition with 4 chains that decided they want to do it without back and forth. So all people that are here of the chains decided we really want to do this, and now we're getting to this. I think it was Douglas that mentioned it at some point of time, and saying now we're getting to this cherry picking thing where one chain comes back and say, well, now you're working on faster finality. That's actually interesting. We would like to contribute to this one. And I could be a hardliner and say, well, that's nice. We can listen to what you like to have, and if it fits into that, it's awesome. If you have some ideas and some proposals that we think they are actually an improvement to what we came up, we also consider them. But would we actually do significant changes to the models and designs that the coalition does, because a non-member wants to have specific changes so they work with their chain? So I think that's kind of the argument we have. While I appreciate you being very inclusive, Eve, this is obviously we might run into the next trouble, because then everybody's paying his share. And then how do you determine this? I mean, do you determine by delta what needs to be developed exclusively for Ultra, or what is the actual share? So I can see this to be very difficult from my personal perspective. But this is like being the Ultra person that says, well, either you're in or out. But this is not the perspective that we should take to actually revise my first comment now. I think it's good to include them, but we get into this situation where we don't know exactly how we should handle this, and what happens if we decide something that ultimately gets them into trouble because it doesn't work with their chain anymore.
That's why I specifically mentioned as an example a chain that says I'll contribute $1. Well, maybe that threshold, is too low. And then maybe somebody will say, well, I'll contribute what the lowest member contributed. And maybe we decide, sorry, but that's still too low. There's a premium now because at this point, right? So maybe I'm just throwing a number.
It's a function of
a cost.
Right? And money that they would be willing to add. Like if Ultra, for example, was saying, oh, we have this massive requirement that nobody else really sees as important, but we're willing to pay for it. I mean, here's how much we want to pay. Now, we just have to reevaluate our respective votes if we think it's worthwhile or not. So if
it'd still be the coalition voting, right? So let's take, for example, Ultra says, we're willing to contribute $10, and the coalition says, sorry, but we will not accept your $10. Or Ultra, again, another example, says we're willing to contribute $2 million to the faster finality, and then the coalition votes and says, yes, we're willing to accept that.
Exactly. And that's how they vote, basically. Like they vote.
That would be my guess.
They vote by increasing the monetary contribution if we don't want to implement their requirements. I mean, obviously, if their requirements are the same than everyone else on chain, they get the free ride. Like that's fine. That's
it is what it is.
If they give us if they contribute 2 million, does that influence any of our decision making? I mean, isn't their ability to influence decision making of the group by joining the group? And that, you know,
well, I would think so. I guess 2 million is an extreme example. If they were to say we're willing to contribute 2 million, you should have just joined the group. It would have been cheaper.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And so maybe the coalition says, great, we'll take your 2 million and now you're in the group and you actually just over contributed. I guess I think that's also unrealistic, but that's why one of the first questions I asked after I received that email was, could you give me a tangible, concrete number of what we're talking about? Because then I think that piece of information is key to determining what's next. And so I guess if the idea was that it was 2 million in this case, I would imagine the coalition might say, oh, great, we're going to take your 2 million. You're now a member of this group. Might as well. You just paid your dues essentially for more than what we were asking for the entire year. But it would be everything that's in between, where I would think it goes back to the coalition as a vote. And we also mentioned in the last call that if that process becomes disruptive, it's also the coalition's responsibility to say, sorry, but we're no longer allowing you to participate in these calls or talk or whatever, because now you're disrupting the process that we determined that we were going ahead with.
Yeah, there's something to be said about the initial commitment, in my opinion. You know,
absolutely.
So
that's worth quite a lot.
So there are chains who committed. We are putting money behind our commitment, and you know, we should be the decision makers, right? So yes, we will listen. We will take opinions from everybody else, but at the end of the day, as far as decision making goes, we should be the ones voting and making those decisions, regardless whether someone decides like, oh, wait, guys, oh, here's $100,000. I want to be part of that.
Can I outline maybe
great
situations that I can anticipate, and just so we can picture?
Yeah, please do, Jesse.
One is what we're describing here, which I would propose we treat it as a donation, and we say, look, you're welcome to donate if you like what we're doing, if you see our priorities, you want to make sure we're successful, you just like us, donate, right? But understand you're donating, and that has zero influence on our decision making. That's one situation, and I'm kind of feeling like that's what Ultra is doing here. They like faster finality. They want to support us because it's now on the top of our list. That's a donation. Maybe there's a limit. You have to donate at least $100, but it doesn't really matter. We're not going to keep track of it. Doesn't mean you can come to our meetings and, you know, have any more weight at the meetings than anybody else. It doesn't mean you have to come to meetings at all, because to Noam's point, we're bringing money. We're also bringing all of our time. So there's a lot of value there. You know, so if you just want to throw money, you like what we're doing, it's a donation.
Donation, I think, is pretty like a no-brainer, in the sense that this is like most likely going to be also, I mean, depending where we go with the structuring of that group, it will also probably be a nonprofit, and would potentially also accept donations. I mean,
it's like no strings attached. Like,
exactly,
but you're just giving us money because you like what we're doing.
That's and a donation though also is kind of no strings attached, in the sense that it typically can't really enforce what it goes towards to. So they're donating to the foundation, to the EOSIO Plus group. That's fine, but I mean, where's that money going to go? I mean, there might be like some preferences, but it's no guarantees.
Right.
And I mean, I don't think it's mutually exclusive either with this kind of, you know, like pay for representation on single items, if that's of interest, where Ultra could also, I mean, and anyone else could also consider making this proposal. Hey, we're going to give you like an extra 100K or 200K for XYZ for fast finality, as long as you support this feature. And then that would be treated as a just commercial proposal like any other. It's just that we, as the voters, we would review the proposal, review the amount that they're suggesting to put, and we would decide if it makes sense or if it doesn't. At the end of the day, like we treat it just as any commercial proposal by anyone. So these would be kind of I think would cover all of the various.
Well, I think there's two others. So in my mind, I'm just trying to compartmentalize. But there's the donation, then there's the I like, and to be fair, in your description, there's no guarantee what the money goes towards, but they would have visibility to our plan. So they're donating it because they see that we're going to do the thing they want. right?
They
we
already
don't choose
do
where
have
the
that
money goes,
visibility.
but they know they're
that visibility is not like a quid pro quo with the donation. It's just like they have visibility because we publish our work and our calls and all of that, and they're welcome to listen and potentially even to be given a voice if we feel like what they have to say is pertinent and does not disrupt the process. But the donation is like independent of that. To give the donation if they like what we're doing. Yeah.
So situation 2 is somebody wants to join, right? We haven't really figured out what that looks like. We probably won't have it anytime soon, but somebody wants to join. We figure out, hey, you want to bring money and you want to come get a vote for your money. Will you join? You agree to the terms that we would have to establish, and you participate in the same capacity as the 4 networks have been participating. That would be the second one. We don't have to go too deep on it. The third one, though, is hey, we're going to pay for this ourselves. Maybe they're going to do RFPs and some of the groups that are working on, getting funded by this group for things we need, take up an RFP for something another group wants that isn't on our agenda, but, is going to end up being best suited into the code base that we're all kind of organized, as an organization managing. So that they come in, they say, hey, look, you guys didn't have this. It's not in your top 20. It's not going to happen this year. We need it. We're going to pay for it. We got OCI, we got Stan, we got somebody that's, reputable, that's going to do it. We're going to pay for it. Will you accept it into your code base? Right. And then we have to say, okay, well, then we're going to have to decide if it's too much of a distraction or not, but we're going to have to decide, hey, let us look at the code. Let us look at the architecture, how you're going to do it. As long as it fits, it's not going to break people. It's not contradictory to what we're trying to achieve. Then yes, we'll welcome it in, but it doesn't mean we're paying for it. It doesn't mean you're giving us money. It's just like a third aspect of trying to, it's something that B1 would never have. we know they didn't really do the greatest job of welcoming third-party contributors who did work that would have been valuable to the software. So that's kind of, to me, a third situation that we might want.
Most of those groups would be getting big benefits out of all the other work that we're doing anyway. So it's not out of the question. You just say, great, if you're going to contribute this, that's great. You are also a beneficiary of all the code we're releasing, it's and security testing we're doing. So I personally am not totally against accepting donations that come with a funding directive, meaning this should be applied to fast finality, but nothing beyond that. I don't think that's the end of the world if somebody wants to do a directed giving. But we can handle those on a individual basis too. The other thing to think about is whether giving these other groups a chance to participate, a la carte, is keeping them from, ordering a meal, from actually joining, which might be more beneficial, right?
That's why I was trying to put them in the 3 categories I described. Like,
sure,
if you like what's on our roadmap, you can give us money as a donation, and it will help us achieve the roadmap sooner. Some things in the top 20, you like it. We're not going to bring it from 18 to 2, but help us accomplish what we said we're going to do by funding us to accelerate it, in theory. And then if you really want to come and have a say, that would be category number 2. And if you want something that maybe was item number 25 or 30, it's not in the current roadmap, then don't give us the money, but go find somebody to do it and work with us to bring it into the code base so that you still can run the same code. You still, it's incorporated, but it's just not, not.
And we're ultimately,
I think we're highlighting. Oh, sorry, go Gil.
I was going to say, as the voters, we're the ultimate, I guess, decision makers as to what a la carte type of approach means, because we vote on all these proposals anyway. So essentially, it's going to be a case-by-case basis, as Douglas was saying. I think with this general framework right now, where we've got everything covered that we may need for foreseeable future. If there is adjustments to be made down the road, it should be fairly simple. But for now, I'd keep an open mind for all of these type of approaches. Just treat them on a case-by-case basis. It's not like I don't think we're going to get a million requests right from the get-go either. So
I think it also highlights the advantages or the reason for being an actual member. It's inevitable, especially when we're talking about, like, a good example is faster finality. When we're talking about things that will go and inevitably touch the core protocol, that can have serious impact on your chain. And if you're not at the table for those discussions, you could find yourself by default being forked away, not because there was no will, but because now you have to make modifications on your end, which may actually end up costing more and create more trouble than just have been at the table in the first place. I think it still, again, highlights the advantage of being at the table instead of being on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And trying to go the a la carte approach.
I mean, yeah, it's there, but people will recognize very quickly that it's probably not the best way to have their interests served. And I mean, like,
I guess we can keep like pushing like, we'll keep, you know, the door's always open, and we'll try to highlight when you're about to hit in a cement wall, and we'll keep telling you you're going to hit the cement wall, and we're going to tell you again. And unfortunately, the reality is at some point somebody's going to hit the cement wall, and it'll be harder. And then we'll say, but we've been telling you every single week that you're going to hit a cement wall, and maybe that's what it takes for unfortunately for something to happen. I'm hoping not, which is why we're publishing these videos, and we're opening these calls to the people that are relevant to be on them. I'm still very hopeful, and I still would like the other chains to be able to join, because it does make the coalition stronger, for multiple reasons, tangible and intangible as well. But recognizing that, like Lucas said before leaving, those that have shown this commitment early on, then that's worth something. That's worth a lot. That says a lot as well.
Yeah, I don't think I think that we have to say at some point there's an in or out, right? You're in and you're making decisions with us, or you're not. And you know, I think that making it too easy undervalues all the other contributions that are being made by everybody else is here, right? So
Sure.
So I mean, there, you know, you can have general comment periods. We're hoping to be open to that, or not. But let's remember, we're not actually breaking anybody else who doesn't, you know, we're not breaking their chain. We're forcing a decision on them. You know, like, first of all, no one has to keep updating unless there's an error, right? And there's, you know, Theo, for example, said, "Hey guys, we're pretty happy with being right here. We don't see the need to upgrade the protocol immediately because it's pretty much doing what we want." So we wouldn't, if we have to go in those directions, we're not actively breaking anybody in cases, you know, because they could simply stay on their current revision. You know, that's it. Then they have decisions to make, just like we all make our decisions.
Just
are
like
we
we
here?
all do.
Are we not here? Do we see the value? Do we not? You know, hopefully, I don't think we'll get to anything too terrible right away, hopefully, but you know, it will demonstrate the value of being part of this. And you know, people can join at any time if they want to make a real commitment.
So just to wrap this particular item up, because we've been on it for about half an hour, I'll once this video is recorded and made published, I'll come and grab the timestamp so that they get the full discussion that we just had. I'll also draft a little message in that group and ping David and Rami. That way they get to have that, and hopefully we can get a response from them. If not, then we keep going as we've been going. We'll extend the invitation for the Scalability Plus working group as well. Yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah. I actually added one option, is kind of cost coverage of higher complexity or additional items. So because it's going to be an RFP process, then we can determine the items that are specific to them, and then we could kind of uplift the cost to them and say, hey, this is what you need to pay, because they, as Douglas just said, they're going to participate anyway if they want to upgrade the code base. So they would, in this scenario, they would pay for the additions that they would like to have. But in general, I would say as you mentioned, Eve, we're now talking about this topic for like half an hour about a chain that is not actually a member. So I think it's good to go back and say, well, let's talk about the things that we actually want to drive forward now. Okay, so here, Justin I see Justin joined. Justin, is there any short update on the brand development group or anything new?
No, nothing too major to report. I think based on the last estimate I received, I think we're around 2 weeks out from having a result. So yeah, we're still going through the process. We just went through the brand architecture, I think it was called, just yesterday. So yeah, I think we're around 2 weeks at the moment.
Okay, so well in time.
Well, and just as an update, we did have feedback. You know, this over the last week we've had quite a bit. They've sent us a draft report, and we've had a lot of feedback. We've given a lot of feedback on that, and there's been 2 phone calls on that topic. So work is definitely getting done there.
Excellent. Okay, so we had the wallet plus discussion already. I still have the update on committees and work groups, but I'm actually wondering if any other of the work groups have been working on the topics. So I know for the governance group, we basically had the initial setup and didn't meet again. So did any of the original work groups continue work on any of the topics at all?
But if you'd like to pull up the working groups, I can say, for example, that the financial working group is now over. It's done. The governance group essentially is also done, because now we've determined the 4 coalition members, their respective voting weights. So I would say we'd be able to close those 2. The development, though, I think in a way still ongoing through the scalability group. I guess it's just not being called the same anymore. And the legal entity group, I think, is on hold. On hold / essentially closed, because we've determined how we will proceed with the current coalition members. In the meantime, leveraging the ENF as, I guess, the accounting entity, and EOS as the treasury chain in the meantime anyways. And we would reopen that at some point if it were to be required, but I would say that one could be closed. Those would be the ones that I guess I can give an update on from my point of view. If somebody has contradicting views, please interject, but that's my sense of it. And that would leave the work group leadership, which I think was determining positions or actual staffing requirements, where I guess also is on hold, in the sense that we have enough resources in-house with the 4 coalition members at this stage anyways, to address the roles that we're essentially discussing. So until it becomes a requirement again, I think that particular group essentially is non-existent, or is not required.
Yeah, I think we can hold off on that until we are looking to actually hire outside staff, right? That was the purpose of that.
One thing that I think one of these groups, I kind of lost a little bit, like the plot with all the groups merging at the end, but we had a group that was kind of define essentially like standard for code inclusion in the common code base. So not only things that go through RFP and blah blah blah, but like random pull requests from random collaborators, and like features, proposals that are generated like spontaneously by the community, I guess. I think this one probably should also be reactivated, because we would want to have some sort of structure there to kind of like not repeat what Block One issues were, where it was like very difficult to have a PR pushed in or something. It's good to have that review process for external contributors that would be willing to help, because we have EOSIO has quite a few of these people. I always see like a random guy like coming out of nowhere and just like very deep understanding, very complicated topics, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you existed. You know, we want this guy to be able to contribute.
Yeah, I agree. That would be good to have a process for that, and that's going to be a complex one or a complicated one to figure out. So I'm going to put in the chat where we got with that group. So there was some stuff written down, so that it's now in the chat. It's in the GitHub, and there's if you click into the objectives or the README, I think the objectives is really the main file. If you go to that directory, and you'll see kind of what we had come up with at this point of how the software development would work, etc. The definition of core code is actually done. Aaron submitted that. I don't know that we ever met to review it, but Aaron did complete that. And that's also one of Kirsten's areas over on the Miro board as well that I think can be moved to done. But at least you see where the software development group got, and if we want to reactivate it and flesh it out. But we were going to use the Apache Software Foundation model of contributors and committers. And when groups, came in and said, "Hey, we want to work on something," that would go into either our grant framework, which we have, or Pomelo, or it could come up to the consortium to review as well. But we wouldn't allow random people to just start developing, sending in PRs. We would want them to either, look for a grant or look for approval first. But we would allow people to eventually be contributors, and we would have the committers. We're happy to even add some of the developers from Telos, Wax, UX into the committer model as well, not just the 3 engineers we have with some of the OCI guys that are the committers today. So take a look at that if we want to reopen that, and we can get participation from across the chains. It was a little light on participation from the other chains. We're happy to modify it. I had kind of tried to drive the meetings and stuff, so at least there's something in writing you can all review, and we can modify it.
Yeah, no, I think that's very very good approach. I know I signed up for some of these groups, and eventually I didn't really follow up on my end, because that was before the coalition was formed, and some of the things had to be determined before. But now that it is, I think it's perfect time to kind of just go over that process again and formally adopt it, or with any modifications that are required. And that brings up an interesting point from the current GitHub repo, the ENF repo, which Mandel released, whatever, but the ENF repo. Each chain, if you want to right now, we don't need to wait for this to formalize or whatever. Each chain could just send your GitHub accounts to Ted and or Jeff, and we could add you at this point from the coalition members. Right. Because essentially the underlying software now is the coalitions. It's under the ENF repo right now until we get the name. But otherwise, the intent was always that would go to the larger group, and we could start that process. So just contact me, and we can make your developers have access to the repo. Yeah, and that could be. I'm looking at Brandon. That could be as well a piece of, a newsworthy news at some points. Like here now here for the first time, here are the committers, or here are the people that have access to this repo. This repo now belongs to the community. And it's not just one chain. It's look at these. You've got developers from 4 chains. It's very concrete.
Yeah, that's great. I noted it down.
And that's really the first time as well, because we never even had that with Block 1. So it's really a formal indication of this coalition, which is really cool. Had we settled on? I know we had the discussion. I just don't recall how we were going to do the actual implementation or the concrete change over. from ENF repo to whatever it's going to be called a repo. Had we closed that discussion in terms of how we were going to do that part, the actual execution of that part? Was it a clone that we decided, or were we just renaming? What was the idea behind that?
I think you can rename it a repository. You can transfer ownership of a repository. So you have, either and or on that, right? You could create a new, or I mean, I'm assuming you're going to keep the ENF organization as the ENF organization. You probably have other things you're doing there. So we would need to make a new organization, decide on, who controls that within this group, and then transfer ownership of the repo to the new organization. And then I would.
Are we able? Clarification: are we able to have? I believe so, but are we able to have multiple owners? And then would we put just the 4 representatives of each group as the 4 owners?
Well, we would just have multiple admins. You can have admins in it. So
but only one owner, right?
We can have 4 people who have plenty of access to do the things, but I don't think you can have there's no multi-sig concept or approval in GitHub, right?
Yeah.
It's really weird. Sorry. It allows multiple owners, and it's really weird because owners can kick out other owners. So it's kind of like a trust thing of, okay, hopefully none of the other owners screw everyone else over and kick them out. I don't think that's the case here, but
no coup d'etat.
Yeah. There's 2 permissions it allows, I think, like admin and owner and regular member. But I do know if it did need to be forked, we forked the block 1 repo because when we did the Mandel, it maintains all of the comments and everything, all the conversations. So everything's retained on the repo whenever you do that. I don't know the best process for this migration, but
you also lose functionality. I think what we want to do probably is, we can bring over all the branches, we can bring over all the code, but if you leave it as a fork, when you try to search the repository through the GitHub UI, looking for code or things, it won't search a forked repository. At least it hasn't historically. So it might change that. But so for that reason, it's in my experience best to just sever the, this repo is forked from that repo thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So commit history and,
Whoa! Why am I on this one? I'm not an expert at this. Someone who's way more familiar with GitHub.
I'll take the GitHub stuff. Zach was doing it in the past because there were only 2 employees. It was either Eve or Zach.
Yeah, that's what I recall. So this is why I put him in by default. But if you want to pick this up, Ted, that's great.
And, at some point, if Matt Witherspoon or Areg or Bucky throw a tantrum, we'll give it to one of them. But chances are it'll be me for the most part doing the administrative stuff. And I've been a programmer for probably more years than I want to admit. So I know it well enough. I just don't know all the project management parts of it that I'm learning now and the automation pieces to it. But, I'm probably as dangerous as most programmers.
Okay, so the task is really determine how the GitHub migration or renaming can be done and what kind of ownership scenario or setup or admin setup we need. So
yeah, I mean, it's very limited. So I mean, we can get to that when we're there. I don't know when the rebranding will be done, and we'll know what it is. I don't know that, if there's enough trust in the organization, if we give admin privileges, why move it? I mean, again, we can probably rename the repo, but it doesn't matter. We can migrate it again. It's just that it's a lot of work. And if that's what everybody wants, we'll do it. It's straightforward. Obviously, we pulled it out of block 1 and stuck it in there, and we can pull it out, so it's the repos can have whatever name we want. And then if we want to stick it in a new organization that is not any one of our group's names, that is whatever the name of we want to call this consortium, we can do that. That's not hard to do. Someone will have to pay for it, right? One of us will be, putting a credit card in it and opening the GitHub accounts and moving all the permissions across and everything. And the real question is, if we trust each other, is it really worth that? As long as you guys have admin rights in there, it's just where it lives. But
I think branding and marketing perspective, it's important to have, because when you go to an organization, you see the repos underneath it. I think at that point, everybody's going to want it to be, you know,
okay. All right. So
we're getting a clean break in name. We're getting a clean break in a lot of things. So I think it makes sense to have it live there. Yep. In terms of the risk of anybody, you know, trying to pull a coup d'etat and own the code, you know, the GitHub repository, it's of no value because everyone else would just point it out and say, well, you know, all it would do would be create some extra work. Yep. So I wouldn't have any trust issues really on that anyway, but there's no win for doing that. So that I can see.
Well, you know, these are all questions about organizational structure, but you bring up a good point about having to pay for it. We don't, at Telos, we don't pay GitHub a cent. You know, if you use public repos, you get most of the features being open source and public. You don't necessarily have to pay for it. You have limited features on private repos, which I don't think this organization will have many, if any, of those. And so, but then under that whole concept, you know, as we get the new name, we're going to get a domain. We're going to probably set up Google or Microsoft or some email service. We will then have emails under this new organization. It would make sense that the owner of the new GitHub organization is somebody here at fuckhorse.com, right? Like whatever it is. So just thinking organizationally, like the moving parts we're going to end up with, I would think so. Right. I mean, we don't have to create new email accounts for that, but you're going to get a domain, you're going to have a website on it. You're probably going to have people that are not, at some point, we're going to have people that are not part of any one chain. They're part of this new organization, at least administrative level.
Well, we haven't gone that far yet. We haven't hired any of those people. And that, to me, that's cost overhead. If we're all working well together, we don't necessarily need those people, especially not in the early part. But sure, we can all have a Fuckhorse address if we want. You know, we can Ted at Fuckhorse and Eve at Fuckhorse and Jesse at Fuckhorse. And we can use those when we're doing submits and stuff like that. I mean, but the truth is we can all also just use like developers just use their own emails and, you know, that they're contributing, especially because we'll have outside contributors that are not part of the Fuckhorse consortium. So, but I'm committed, we will put it in under Fuckhorse when the name shows up. We'll move it under there and we'll get admin rights to every one of the 4 chains so that everyone has an ability to do stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. We've had feedback and people in our organization who have actually had really wanted to prioritize the public view of our GitHub organization. So I think that's kind of why I'm saying it should have its own. And
totally makes sense. I agree. I'm obviously
marketing perspective.
Not a marketing guy, so yeah, you can ignore my opinion on that. I agree with you though.
Okay. It's kind of hard to keep track of this FH thing. But at some point we need to have like an EOS account for good cause where you all send over the EOS that piled up after many meetings. So anyway, good.
I'm about to send $1.432 million. I think I've covered my FH square bucket.
No, this is
on that, by the way, I do have the account ready for creation. So I'll send that after this call in the group, just so that everybody sees the account.
Okay, that's great. Good. I would put the GitHub migration scenario then into the backlog. I put it to May 19th because this is when we should know a name, and probably if we talk about the name, we're very close also to registering websites, URLs, and whatever. So I put it into the backlog for now, unless Ted, you want to look at an opportunity for the ownership model.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. What was the point again?
I just said I put the GitHub migration scenario into the backlog with the date for May 19th because that's well after the branding initiative, unless you want to look at the ownership model that's possible.
No, I mean, it's going to be straight. It's not that hard to do. It'll be more about execution when the date comes up. we'll we'll have I think we just have a conversation with the 4 chain owners. We all agree, and then someone's got to start pressing buttons.
Yeah, makes sense. Good.
Thanks.
Okay. I have the priority top 20 item list here still on the agenda. Has there been any movement on this part at all, or is that basically determined and agreed?
Yes and no, so maybe not a satisfactory answer. So in the scalability group, or leading up to the scalability group, the idea was to pick off which items fell into the scalability group and then really bring them in that group to be able to determine is there any overlap or how we address scalability as a whole. Now, the items that I guess weren't deemed to be a part of scalability then weren't discussed, and then they remain in the order that they were, or they remain, I guess the 20 is done. The reason why I'm saying yes but no is also we said, well, some items are missing information, so those are being addressed, which is, I guess, the different group or a different initiative, which was especially the ad hoc ones, going one by one to determine what that means in terms of a one-pager or complete kind of the general idea. So yes, more yes on that side. And then also yes on the side that we mentioned, for example, taking some of them that we knew and then getting, like, concrete one would be the SDK one, where the ENF at the time when we did commission the blue papers, we had mentioned to the teams that should those items be prioritized and should that be determined to be a priority prior to even EOSIO being a thing, that we would give them first dibs. And so the SDK one is one of those where, hey, Aaron, you get first dibs because it's been prioritized on basically coming up to saying you would like to take on this project. Please create the RFP. Now, outside of those items, so outside of the scalability ones, or the ones that were pulled into scalability, outside of the ones that were ad hoc that are now being addressed one by one to create that one pager, outside of SDK, how many items are left on the list? Those have not been discussed at this stage, or there's been no movement on those at this stage. And that would be the audit items, the core items, and the API items, as well as, I guess, whichever leftover wallet plus item was on that list as well. That's not the SDK. So actually, that would be worthwhile going over, yes, to determine how do we address those, yes.
We, as part of, so like Jeff is not here today, but we kind of also started on I guess like just these one pagers for every single one of these items, just to, even the ones that were defined in these other papers, in the audit, API, and core wallet papers, just so that we kind of begin like this discussion, because we essentially, as part of the RFP process, what was discussed with Jeff was that there would be, in any case, there would be like a public discussion phase to where any team that has an interest in eventually submitting a proposal can come up, look at the overview, ask questions, have a public discussion basically about the requirements and whatnot. And this leads to the final specifications for on which people can bid. So, but yeah, the process is underway. We already had like 4 out of 20 done, plus the scalability group should be addressing, I believe, 4 more by the end of by next week's meeting, same date and today. So in theory, we should have the, I'll make sure to remind everyone, but we should have these drafts ready for the Scalability Plus call on Tuesday. And then if they are satisfactory, we can present them or at least update status during this call next week.
I think we still have quorum, but I know that Lucas is gone. That brings up an interesting point, whether or not this group wants to honor the commitment or not that the ENF had done when it created the working groups in the first place, to give first dibs to the original writers should one of their items be prioritize as to whether or not they want to tackle that item or submit a bid for that item. And just because I just opened up in the background the actual priority, the top 20, and the second one, for example, is secure smart contract libraries.
It shouldn't be invited to.
I think we should
bid at the very least.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they also have the first right of refusal, right? They might, because we saw that, let's say with the API transaction lifecycle improvements. The idea was we put that as a priority, or we put that as part of the proposals, but we're not saying that we can do it. We're just saying this should be done. Right. And so essentially they exercise their first right of refusal. But I'm going through the list, and like number 2 was secure smart contract libraries. So it would be useful to know whether or not the other 2 chains that are still remaining on this call are comfortable with honoring that I guess the commitment that we made to the original authors. And if so, then I would go, let's say for that particular item, I'd go back to the Audit Plus group and say, hey, secure smart contract libraries were highlighted as one of the priorities. Would you like to bid on it? Yes or no? And then what I could do is go through the whole list, reach out to the authors, get yeses or nos. And if we get yeses, then we also get them to actually write down, their bid with the actual proposal.
I mean,
and if the answer is no to honor that, then that's fine too, because then ENF could do that by itself, because it wasn't a commitment from the other chains. It really was a commitment from EOS.
Right. Well,
I don't know that that needs to be a hard, fast right of first refusal. I think there are going to be situations where maybe that's not ideal. And if we create that as a hard, fast expectation, people will feel like they've been, excluded somehow. But it seems like a good general practice to follow. And can we put it in that slot?
What I mean, Douglas, is this is not a commitment that this group needs to withhold, right, but it is a commitment that I need to withhold. And so right, so that's why I'm saying this predates the creation of this group. And so
so they all
I would just need to know.
Did you promise them first right of refusal, or did you promise them that they would be funded if they wanted to do the work? Because I guess third question, do each blue paper have a clear amount that they would fund? Not that I don't trust like Greymass or Sentinel, but just in general, like, hey, we'll fund you to do the work, and then they say, okay, it's $50 million. Like, that's
so each item had a particular budget associated to it, but the proposals themselves were kind of mini proposals. What we would do is go back to them and say, hey, this item was prioritized. Can you now expand on that and define your budget much further? And if the budget makes sense, so if they come back and they say $50 million, we say, sorry, but not happening. But if the budget makes sense based on what is being proposed, then we were going to fund that. If they bid on it and if it was prioritized, then we were going to sign that contract. Or they could say, listen, we don't want to bid on that. We're good. Please go up to official, open tender type of thing. All I'm asking and all I need to know from this group is whether or not this group is okay with honoring that commitment as this group. And if not, I'm completely okay with that, because it's not a commitment that you guys made, it's a commitment that we made. And then if the answer is no, which is completely fine, then I would then let this group know of which items in this list the actual teams want to bid on, and then we would just pay for that, which actually would reduce the length of this list for this group, essentially. Do you know what I mean?
I think very practical, practically speaking, chances are, the people that wrote these papers are definitely, in my opinion, at the very least, like some of the leading experts on these respective matters. That's why they've been selected to write these papers in the first place. But I also think that we might see that there's some nuances that are, I guess, like kind of brought forward by us as the kind of customers of these of these proposals, in a sense where they might, I mean, they might not exactly address some of the issues. There might be some alternative proposals that might be discussed. So I feel like it's a bit I guess like restrictive to automatically accept these proposals as they were written, and they should still go through that discussion, open discussion process that Jeff was highlighting, where everyone that has an interest in these topics is now free to ask questions, to suggest additional comments, and
yeah. Well, so that's what I'm saying, Guillaume. EOS has gone through that. Mm-hmm. We've actually had a formal feedback process for all of these items on EOS. We've already even there was even an incentive program for people to participate in that process. So we've already gone through that.
It would seem to me that this essentially would mean, in relation to that, I guess, soft commitment that you made, that you've already cast your vote with these agenda items for a specific proposal implementation or whatnot, and it might be the right solution for all of us.
No, not necessarily, because part of what was written in the proposals wasn't a scope of work. It wasn't a full breakdown of how they would implement this and what they would tackle, right? Some of these items are a summary of, we think we need this, but it's part of a 50-page document. So we're not writing a 10-page document on this one thing. So the idea would be, again, let's use the concrete example, secure smart contract libraries. We would go to the Audit Plus original writers, which are Sentinel and Slomis, and say, listen, we've highlighted that secure smart contract libraries are a priority for the 4 coalition chains. And regardless of whether or not you guys choose to fund that or it falls part of this group, let's just remove that for the particular discussion right now. We would go to them and say, that was highlighted as a priority. Can you now make a formal pitch for that one item? Then we review, and if it makes sense, EOS would pay for it, right? Because we gave them, that was part of the process when we went out in the beginning. Now, we'd be okay with that. And if that's the case, and then then essentially this group does get secure smart contract libraries without having to pay for it. It doesn't come from this group's budget. Or this group says, actually, let's do that, go out to that team. And then after we review what they submit, maybe this group, the coalition, says, actually, we're good with what they're proposing. We're fine with that. Let's take from this treasury. Or that's not what we were envisioning. Let's remove that item from this group potentially, or go out to another tender, which would be kind of weird. But then EOS just pays for it anyways. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, that's
all I'm trying to figure out that part, because we undertook this process before this group started, with commitments that we made to those original groups, and I just don't want to leave them hanging. And right now,
no, for sure,
we've been leaving those groups hanging, waiting for this group to see where there's overlap.
Yeah. So could we just kind of make a proposal, as a response? I would support a first right of refusal for them, right? Like if there's other people that are, willing to do it, and we're happy with their bid, then at least give the author the opportunity to do it for that price, or even give them slightly preferential. Like, okay, well, you're bidding a little higher, but you wrote the darn blue paper and you deserve it, you get it. But also, I would hope that if this group decided what we had envisioned for a particular item is a slightly different thing than what they initially proposed, that we should do a best effort to not duplicate efforts, right? Like,
yes,
we're all here trying to deliver the same things. We don't want 2 smart contract libraries that are very similar, but that's just going to create discontinuity across the whole ecosystem. So
no, and I think it's actually an opportunity, because now I understand what you meant. Essentially, every single of these, I guess, proposals, especially the ones that voted that were ranked high in the priorities of this group, I guess the authors have an opportunity, if they want, to also take into consideration. I mean, first of all, pitch it to the other chains and take into consideration their own requirements that might have not made their way into the ENF process. Because for our part, for example, we did not participate in this process much at all. We kind of came late to the discussion on the newer groups, Yield Plus and Scalability Plus and these, but we didn't. We did not participate in the earlier ones. I think these proposals are generally very, very good. And as I was reading the papers, though, I would have probably added a few, like suggestions or contributions myself, representing UX, and I would assume maybe others and representing other chains might also have these kind of contributions to make. So all I would say is I would offer all of the teams that participated to these papers to actually pitch and take into consideration potentially like opinions from these other chains, and that could result at the very least, like, it won't hurt their position with the ENF, and the best case scenario, it might result in more funding or I guess like a better implementation of their suggested proposals if other chains participate. So I think it's kind of best of both worlds if we do it like that.
Does that give you an answer, Yves, or does that just kind of?
Yeah, no. I think
the answer is yes.
I think we're all on the same page. Let me try and resume. I guess in bullet points in a way. I'll go to those teams that are in the top 20 list, that have items in the top 20 list. I'll say those were highlighted as priorities. Can you actually write a proposal for this, a detailed proposal? I'll then share that proposal with this group and say, is this what you envisioned? Or do we go back to them and ask them to expand? And then if this group says, actually, that's not what we're looking, we don't like this bid, then we can determine at that time. It's possible that we say, no, not for this team, not for that item, which still leaves perhaps the door for the ENF to pick other items in that aren't in this list to still assign work. My thinking is that these teams are limited in terms of capacity anyways. And so we may want to give them 3 contracts. They may not. So I'm thinking a lot of them will just say, we can't handle the 4 that you're trying to give me all at the same time. So we'll just keep the line of communication open with this group. I'll go to those people. At least we'll get bids started from those teams. And then this group can then review whether or not that fits what they were thinking. If it doesn't fit what they were thinking, we give them time to adjust. If the adjustment still doesn't, satisfy this group, then the ENF can make the determination at that time to either proceed with that specific to EOS without harming the other, or deciding to work with that team to work on something else and then open that particular item to the greater ecosystem. Does that kind of resume well?
Summarize, yep.
Yeah, I agree. Give it some back and forth, give them a chance to revise if we have feedback. If we reach a stalemate, then review at that point. But generally, I can say my personal opinion, give them all a chance. They worked hard on the blue papers and we decided we like what they offered at a high level. Let's go one layer deeper and give them a chance.
Cool. What I'll do in the document that we have, spreadsheet with the tab ENF publication, I'll just highlight in yellow, just for ease of reference, those that I'll reach out to.
What's a realistic time frame to reach out to them, Yves? Is that next week?
I can reach out to them before next meeting. I would imagine that it's not realistic to get a full bid from them before next meeting, but I can commit to reaching out to them before next meeting.
Excellent. Okay,
oh yeah, that was, yeah.
Last two items I got here is the review of the voting common smart contract that Guillaume created. I'm not sure if that's actually required. If anybody's got a requirement to see that in detail.
It's very simple.
Yeah, it's just.
This is just like as a kind of first iteration for a mechanism to have any decision or votes or like timestamping that we need to do on chain. Currently, it's been deployed on Telos. It's not configured yet. In order to configure it, we would just need to have like users and public keys for anyone that. Username and public keys for anyone that wants to participate, like a Telos account. And then essentially like, we can set it up and we're good to go. Code is very simple, not much there. Like took me like an hour to write, so it's quite straightforward. It allows for just like an on-chain record of just about of any type of message, really. So we just have to use a little bit of structure. Say, okay, proposing vote on this, blah, blah, blah. Here's a vote text, blah, blah, blah. And then all voters like cast a yes or no or whatever, like, multiple choice options. And it's loosely defined, flexible enough to do just about anything, and very simple to operate.
Would you do me a great favor and reshare that the links to the repositories in the Telegram chat?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Yeah, last item I've got here, that was actually a discussion that we kind of had last week, and we did discuss that with Jeff earlier. So the basic idea was that each of the working groups or initiatives would actually determine themselves how they would want to organize that. So as we have a request now from the Scalability group to have me help them, so most likely the other groups have determined how they structure the work and how they move forward. So question is, do we need like a general guideline of how we want to move forward with this in the different work groups? And for the RFP process, we already discussed that we want to look at this one solution from EOS Detroit, and that we will anyway, Ted, myself, and Jeff will have a meeting to look at the scope, at the reporting structure and reports. So I'm not sure if we need to have any further discussion on this at the moment. My feeling is no, not really. Any opinions on that?
I agree with you.
Okay, so if nobody else wants to discuss that, then I put it to done, and then we just move on with the initiatives that we have, and
just keep moving on.
Yeah, so it looks good. So one question I would like to raise is, and that's probably the last one for today then, we still had this initial voting card here for the Wallet Plus Blue Paper. So my assumption is also that this is no longer needed in this way because it's now introduced in the formal RFP process, and Aaron is in the process of creating that RFP document. So yeah. I would guess we can close this one.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Good. Then while we're clearing up, we have this legal entity work group. These are still in the backlog the moment that we want to look at them. The EOSIO full code audit, there's no active group working on this. I mean, it's on the priority grid.
I am working on an RFP for that. It is one of the top 20 items. I'm blanking on which number it is, we were starting to work on that, and it's a little bit on my backlog, because we wanted to get an RFP out for that. We have 5 or 6 companies we've identified that would be good at doing that code audit. And I think it's just unfortunately been a bit on the backlog, but it is something that Jeff and I are trying to do. The question is, should it now be handled in the order that it falls in the top 20? I'll have to go look up where it is in the top 20. I thought it did make it into the top 20.
I think a good approach to the audit would be to align it with a release. I mean, there's certain things that you just don't want to do before the others, right? Cart before the horse. If we went audited and then released, 300 lines of code later, wow, that was a waste, right? But like we have a name, we have the code, we have the GitHub set up, we have a Mandel release with this first set of features that would be probably a commit that we would hand to an auditor and say, this is what we want you to audit. This is our release, or at least it's our, plan, our targeted release version, something like that, right?
That makes sense to me.
And just for reference on the discussion that we had earlier of first right of refusal for items, that particular item came from Douglas. It didn't come from the original audit plus blue paper. So that item would not fall in the first bit of refusal. So just so everybody knows.
I wouldn't be bidding on auditing it anyway.
No. I meant no. Actually, I didn't mean that. I meant the authors of the audit plus blue paper.
There's no blue paper that was authored by somebody who should get first right of refusal, I think is what he's saying.
I get it.
That particular item doesn't fall under their purview, is what I meant.
Douglas, you aren't gonna exercise your first right of refusal to do.
I waived that.
But he could
to audit the entire EOSIO Mandel code base. I'll step aside.
In just one Saturday, Douglas will get that done.
Oh yeah, just one day. Yeah.
Okay,
let's move on. It's a long weekend at least.
Yeah, let's move on. We still have this identification of feature deltas for chains versus Mandel. Do we actually need to have that delta to the actual core code? Or is that
to the core code? I don't know. Would be definitely a worthwhile exercise to ask everyone if they believe that their particular modifications should be incorporated to the core code. In our case, they're quite straightforward to, I guess, port upstream as new versions are released. So I wouldn't necessarily make it a requirement for UX. I don't know for the other chains, but in our case, we're quite happy to maintain these differences in our own code base, but potentially could be added to the core as well if others saw value in these changes.
So it'd be down to 2 chains now, because obviously EOS is using the core code. So it would only be up to Wax and Telos now to decide if they want to look at their differences and bring them into the core code or maintain their differences separately.
Actually, Guillaume just did a full diff on the latest release. So
we don't have any changes to Node OS at Telos. So I think Waxes are around RSA and an RSA intrinsic, but we don't have any changes. We run vanilla EOSIO. Our smart contract changes are pretty significant, and some of them are pretty innovative, and I would be happy, they're public and open if we incorporated some of those into the Mandel smart contracts or whatever they're called. That would be we'd be willing to accommodate that. It's open source, and also then we have less to rebase when we
I think there was out of all these 20 top priorities, I think there was one that had to do with the system contracts. All the other ones like we're kind of outside of that scope, but one, if I remember, had to do with system contracts. So it might be interesting to see like to revisit that one and to determine whether or not or how we should go about it. Because I mean, there's as Jesse said, this is where we're gonna have a lot of differences between all these chains, like the system contracts and you know, like even like the structure of like, well, the boot sequence and all of the different particularities. Like for example, we don't have Rex on UX, we don't have elastic leeway, we have other things instead. So it's these kind of things are a bit I guess like outside of the scope, I believe, of the coalition, unless people have other views there. But I think the like system contracts don't really fall under this group, in my opinion.
Okay, so I moved this over to the next agenda, and the only one that, well, UX will you would look at this, Guillaume, and then we will check with Lucas from Wax, because the others seem to be clear.
Yeah. But as I said, like we at this point we don't feel a need to merge our changes back into the Node.js changes back into the main. So it's really just Wax. Telos doesn't need it, and EOS is the reference implementation anyway. So it's just Wax for them to decide if they want to push like and I guess like it might be even in a sense it's potentially an interesting collaboration, because my understanding is Wax implemented RSA intrinsics in like EOSIO first layer, I guess. We implemented RSA on the second layer as a smart contracts basically. So it's quite, I mean, there might be some interest in, I guess, working together and maintaining the code base moving forward. But I mean, I don't know if we want it as an intrinsic or it's actually RSA is really fast compared to other schemes. It might not in terms of the security that it provides, but for a lot of use cases, it's more than enough, and it runs no problem inside ESVM on the second layer. So for the sake of simplicity, Wax might be interested in considering that approach. I don't know, like it's up to them.
Okay, we'll check this the next meeting. And the last one, I would actually like to close this one, because I think with the current setup we have, it doesn't make sense to kind of add Jira as a complexity level, because most of the topics will be covered in GitHub anyway. So I would propose to move this and not work in a Jira and GitHub integration, if that's fine for all of you.
I support that.
Awesome. Then we've got the board cleared and everything covered for today. And unless you have any last points or topics you would like to cover for today.
I don't. I'm late for another call, so I'm going to drop. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Making it so.
Okay, then we close the call. Thanks everybody.
All.
Have a great evening.
Everybody.
Cheers.